Don't drink that medicine. The voice was a whisper, a tiny thread of sound in the cavernous silence of the penthouse office. It was so quiet that Anya Sharma, CEO of Pharmaxis Innovations, initially thought she had imagined it. Her fingers were already curled around the small, cobalt blue bottle on her desk, the liquid inside a familiar promise of relief from the migraine clawing at the base of her skull. I said, "Don't drink it." This time, the voice was firmer, though no less quiet. Anya's head snapped up. Her gaze swept the expanse of polished chrome and black marble. The office, her sanctuary on the 88th floor, was supposed to be empty. It was well after midnight. Her security detail was stationed 2 floors below, and the only other person with clearance this high at this hour was the night janitor. Her eyes landed on him then. He stood near the towering glass wall that overlooked the glittering, indifferent city. He was a tall, unassuming man who had a knack for being invisible, a ghost who polished away the day's smudges and left no trace of his own existence. Liam, she thought his name was. He was holding a trash receptacle, but his posture was strangely still, his attention fixed entirely on her. Beside him, clutching his pant leg, was a small girl with wide, serious eyes and 2 braids that fell over the collar of her worn pink coat. It was the child who had spoken. Anya's first instinct was irritation. A child had no place here. His child. It was a breach of protocol, a violation of the sterile, controlled environment she had painstakingly built around herself. "You are not authorized to have a guest on this floor," she said, her voice sharp and cold, the words cutting through the silence. "And she is not to speak to me." The janitor, Liam, did not flinch. He simply placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. His gaze met Anya's, and for the first time, she noticed his eyes. They were not the downcast, dismissive eyes of a man used to being overlooked. They were intelligent, analytical, and held a depth that seemed entirely out of place with his blue coveralls. "Lily, apologize to Miss Sharma," he said, his voice a low, calm rumble. The girl, Lily, looked from her father to Anya, her small face a mask of solemnity. "I'm sorry for being loud, ma'am, but you still shouldn't drink it." Anya's jaw tightened. The sheer audacity was staggering. She picked up the bottle. It was her prescribed tension reliever, a custom compound formulated by her own company's labs. She took it 3 times a week. "And why precisely?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescending ice. "Should I not take my medication?" Liam finally spoke to her directly. "The seal," he said, giving a slight nod toward the bottle in her hand. "It's compromised." Anya scoffed, a brittle, humorless sound. She spun the bottle, her thumb tracing the familiar paper seal over the cap. It was perfectly intact. "It is not. I opened the box myself 10 minutes ago. Now, take your daughter and leave this office before I have security escort you from the building. Permanently." He didn't move. He wasn't being defiant, she realized. He was waiting. It was the unnerving stillness of a person who is absolutely certain of their position. "With respect, Ms. Sharma, it is. Look closer. At the bottom edge of the paper, just above the X in Pharmaxis. The perforation is misaligned by less than 1 millimeter. And there's a microabrasion on the glass, right below it." An involuntary flicker of doubt registered in her mind. It was absurd. He was a janitor. He was seeing things that weren't there, but his specificity was jarring. She tilted the bottle under the focused beam of her desk lamp, her meticulously manicured nails tracing the path he'd described. Her breath hitched. He was right. The paper seal, which looked perfect to the naked eye, was indeed off. A tiny, almost invisible tear in the perforation, so small it could have been a printing error. But beneath it, exactly where he'd indicated, was a faint scratch on the bottle's surface, the kind of mark that might be left by a fine needle. It was the sort of detail her own multimillion-dollar quality control department would have missed. It was the sort of detail everyone would have missed. Her heart began to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. She looked from the bottle to the man and his child. They stood silhouetted against the city lights, a strange tableau of the invisible and the powerful. The girl, Lily, had a small, tattered sketchbook clutched in her other hand. "How did you see that?" Anya's voice was a hoarse whisper, the ice in her tone having melted into a pool of cold dread. Liam's expression remained unreadable. He gave the slightest of shrugs, a gesture that seemed to dismiss a world of knowledge. "I notice things that are out of place. It's part of the job." He gestured to the overflowing trash can beside him, a silent, sardonic statement on the nature of his work. But Anya wasn't a fool. She had built an empire on her ability to analyze data, to see patterns others missed. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that what he had just done had nothing to do with cleaning floors. It was an act of profound, almost impossible observation. She carefully placed the bottle back on her desk, pushing it away as if it were a venomous snake. The throbbing in her head was suddenly a secondary concern. A new, more terrifying pressure was building in her chest. Someone had been in her office. Someone had tampered with her medication. And the only person who had noticed was the man who emptied her trash. Anya stood, her movements stiff. She looked at the man, truly looked at him, for the first time in the 2 years he had worked for her company. He was a ghost who had just saved her life. "Who are you?" she asked, the question hanging in the air between the janitor's cart and the throne of her corporate empire. Liam's gaze drifted to his daughter, a flicker of something protective, almost hunted, in his eyes. He pulled the child a little closer. "My name is Liam Carrick," he said, his voice level. "I'm the night janitor." An hour later, Liam Carrick stood in the same office, but the context had shifted entirely. Lily was asleep on a supple leather couch in the corner, her small form curled up under his own jacket, the worn sketchbook resting on her chest. 2 men in severe black suits, Anya's head of security and his deputy, stood like statues by the door. Anya herself sat behind her immense desk, the offending bottle now sealed in a sterile evidence bag at its center. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was heavy with unspoken questions and the low hum of high-level crisis. Anya had not spoken more than a few clipped commands since her discovery. She had made a single phone call, her voice low and urgent, and then had simply watched Liam with an unnerving intensity, as if he were a complex equation she was determined to solve. Finally, she broke the silence. "Carrick, Liam, age 38, employed by citywide cleaning services, contracted to Pharmaxis for the last 26 months. Prior employment, various maintenance and custodial positions dating back 7 years. Before that, nothing. No credit history, no social security activity, no digital footprint. You effectively came into existence 7 years ago." Her voice was flat, a recitation of facts pulled from a hastily compiled digital file projected on a transparent screen only she could see. Liam remained silent, his hands clasped loosely behind his back. He had known this day might come. He had dreaded it. "You live in a 2-room apartment in the warehouse district," she continued, her eyes never leaving his face. "Your daughter, Lily, is 6 years old, homeschooled. Her mother, Elena Carrick, died 7 years ago. Car accident. The same year you appeared on the grid." She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "You're a ghost, Mr. Carrick. A man trying very hard to be invisible." "Why?" Liam's gaze flickered towards Lily. The gentle rise and fall of her chest was the only anchor in his world. "My life is my own concern, Miss Sharma. I'm a janitor. I did my job. I noticed something was wrong, and I told you." "No," Anya countered, leaning forward. The desk lamp cast sharp shadows across her face, emphasizing the severe lines of her cheekbones. "You did not do a janitor's job. You performed a level of forensic analysis that would be the envy of my top lab technicians. You saw a microabrasion and a submillimeter misalignment from 15 feet away, in low light. That isn't a job. That is a prodigal skill. A skill that does not belong to a man who mops floors for a living." She stood and walked around the desk, stopping a few feet from him. The scent of expensive perfume and antiseptic cleanness surrounded her. She was power personified, a queen in her glass castle. I am offering you a great deal of money to tell me the truth. Who are you, and what are you hiding from? Liam felt the old walls closing in, the past a tangible weight on his shoulders. The life he had so carefully constructed, a quiet, anonymous existence dedicated solely to his daughter, was fracturing. But greed wasn't the key to unlocking his secrets. Fear was, and right now his only fear was for the small, sleeping girl on the couch. The only thing I want is to take my daughter home and forget this night ever happened, he said, his voice low and firm. Anya studied him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, he thought she might call security and have him thrown out. Instead, she returned to her desk and slid a tablet across the polished surface towards him. This is a data fragment, she said, her tone shifting from inquisitorial to purely transactional. It was pulled from a corrupted server in our research and development department 2 days ago. Our best analysts can't decrypt it. They say it's gibberish, a corrupted file. I don't believe them. I believe it's a message. On the screen was a chaotic jumble of alphanumeric code, symbols, and fragmented data packets. It was a digital disaster zone. What does this have to do with me? Liam asked, though a cold knot of recognition was already forming in his stomach. He knew this language. It was the native tongue of his former life. I am a person who trusts data above all else, Anya stated. My instincts, however, are telling me 2 things. 1, someone tried to poison me tonight. 2, the man who saved me is more than he appears. I believe these 2 facts are connected. I am testing that hypothesis, she gestured to the tablet. Look at it. Tell me what you see. If you see nothing, as you claim you should, then you and your daughter can walk out that door. I'll arrange for a generous severance package with your employer and a non-disclosure agreement that will ensure your quiet life remains quiet. Her eyes narrowed, a glint of steel in their dark depths. But if you see something, if you see the pattern in the chaos that I know is there, then your life is about to change. You will work for me. You will find out who did this. And in return, I will provide you with something more valuable than money. I will provide you with absolute security for you and for her, she nodded towards Lily. I will place my entire corporate infrastructure around you. You will be a ghost no longer. You will be a fortress. That is my offer. It was a test, but it was also a trap. To refuse was to remain exposed. The people who had come after Anya were clearly powerful and ruthless. If they discovered he was the one who had foiled their plan, his quiet life would be over anyway. His anonymity, which he'd thought was his shield, had suddenly become his greatest vulnerability. To accept was to step back into the world that had nearly destroyed him, the world that had taken his wife and shattered his soul. It was a world of numbers and lies, of hunting monsters through trails of digital breadcrumbs. He looked at the tablet, at the nonsensical code. But it wasn't nonsensical to him. His mind, the part of him he had tried to starve and silence for 7 years, began to stir. It saw the ghost echoes of a deleted routing key. It saw the faint signature of a double encryption protocol he recognized. It saw a sequence hidden in the hexadecimal strings, a sequence that wasn't random at all. It was a date from 3 weeks ago, corresponding to a catastrophic clinical trial failure for their most promising new drug, Project Lyra. The official report had called it an unforeseeable complication. This data fragment whispered a different word. Sabotage. He felt a physical jolt, a phantom pain from an old life. He had spent years running from this feeling, this dark thrill of the hunt. He looked at Lily, so peaceful in her sleep, her face untroubled by the monsters that lurked in the world of adults. Anya's offer of a fortress was a devil's bargain. But what choice did he have? He was a king who had abdicated his throne, but the enemy was now at the gates of his hermitage. Slowly, Liam reached out and touched the screen. With one finger, he isolated a single string of code. 86B4E2C1. This isn't gibberish, he said, his voice raspy, the words tasting like rust and regret. It's a ghost key. It's pointing to a firewalled server, one that was wiped clean 3 weeks ago. On the same day Project Lyra failed. Anya Sharma did not smile. Her expression was one of cold, grim vindication. She had found her weapon. "Welcome back to the world, Mr. Carrick." The transition from janitor to phantom was seamless and swift. By dawn, Liam Carrick, the custodian, had officially resigned from citywide cleaning services, citing personal reasons. A generous, anonymous severance had been deposited into his meager bank account. By noon, Liam Carrick, the asset, was installed in a sterile, windowless office in the sub-basement of the Pharmaxis Tower, a room that did not officially exist on any schematic. It was a gray box furnished with a single desk, a chair, and a terminal that glowed with purpose. It was a monk's cell for a digital age, a place for secrets to be dissected. Anya had been ruthlessly efficient. "You will report only to me," she had stated, her voice devoid of emotion as she'd led him down a series of restricted access corridors. "You will have no title, no official position. As far as anyone is concerned, you do not exist. Your access credentials will be tied to my own biometric signature. You are a ghost in my machine. Your task is simple. Follow the trail you found last night. Find out who sabotaged Project Lyra and who tried to kill me. I believe they are one and the same." For Liam, the first few days were a disorienting plunge back into a life he had forsaken. The muscle memory was still there. His fingers flew across the keyboard, the arcane languages of code and finance flowing from him as if the 7-year gap had been nothing more than a long weekend. He peeled back layers of encryption, navigated ghost servers, and sifted through mountains of financial data, feeling the familiar, cold thrill of the hunt. It was a part of him he both hated and had missed with a desperate, hollow ache. He worked with a singular focus, fueled by black coffee and the constant, gnawing fear for Lily's safety. Anya had kept her word. A new apartment had been arranged, a high-security residence under a corporate pseudonym, with round-the-clock surveillance that was both suffocating and reassuring. Lily, adaptable as children are, was simply excited about the bigger rooms and the view of the park. She drew pictures of their new castle in her sketchbook, unaware that its walls were built of her father's resurrected demons. He and Anya communicated through a secure, encrypted channel. Their interactions were brief, transactional. He sent her encrypted reports. She sent back terse acknowledgments and authorizations for deeper access. She remained the Ice Queen, isolated in her penthouse office, and he, the ghost in the basement. The physical distance between them was a chasm, a perfect reflection of their disparate worlds. Yet, a reluctant alliance was being forged in the crucible of data. Liam's initial discovery about the ghost key had been the thread. He pulled on it, and the tapestry of deceit began to unravel. He found that the wiped server had contained the raw data from the Project Lyra trials. Using forensic recovery software he had designed years ago, he began to painstakingly reconstruct the deleted files. It was slow, meticulous work. Fragments of data returned like specters from a digital grave. He found discrepancies, tiny but significant, between the recovered raw data and the official report submitted to the board and the FDA. The trial hadn't just failed, it had been meticulously engineered to fail. Key data points had been altered, patient responses subtly falsified, creating a cascade effect that made the promising drug appear dangerously unstable. They didn't just hide a failure, Liam wrote in a report to Anya late one night. They created one. The original data shows Lyra was not only viable but revolutionary. It would have cornered the market on autoimmune therapies. Its failure cost this company billions and cleared the field for our biggest competitor, Sterling Faro, to launch their rival drug. Anya's response came in seconds. Motive established. Now find the means and the man. The means, he discovered, was a piece of malware, a sophisticated worm that had been introduced into the R&D network. It was a digital scalpel, designed to alter specific datasets without tripping any of the system's alarms before erasing itself completely. It was the work of a master, but even masters leave footprints. Liam traced the malware's entry point. It hadn't come from an external hack. It had been uploaded from a terminal within the Pharmaxis network itself. A high-level terminal. He cross-referenced the access logs for the date and time of the upload. There were 5 possibilities, 5 senior executives who had the clearance and the opportunity. One of them was a traitor. He sent the list of 5 names to Anya. Her response was a single command: dig. He began to build profiles not of the men themselves but of their digital lives. He dissected their financial records, their corporate expenses, their network activity. He was searching for the anomaly, the break-in pattern that would betray the guilty party. 4 of the men were clean, ambitious, ruthless, but their digital lives were perfectly aligned with their corporate personas. The 5th man was different: Marcus Thorne, a senior board member, head of the acquisitions committee, a man with a public reputation for shrewd, aggressive business tactics and a private one for extravagant tastes. On the surface, his finances were immaculate. But Liam felt that familiar itch, the instinct that told him the truth was buried deeper. He started looking not at Thorne's accounts, but at the accounts connected to him. His family, his shell corporations, his preferred charities. It was like untangling a knot the size of a city block. For days he found nothing. Thorne was careful. He was a fortress of his own. During this time, the dynamic with Anya began to shift, subtly at first. She started calling him on the secure line instead of just messaging. The calls were still about the investigation, but her questions became less about the what and more about the how. "How did you know to look at the charity's sub-accounts?" she asked one evening, her voice betraying a hint of genuine curiosity. "People like Thorne don't use traditional methods for moving money," Liam explained, staring at the lines of code on his screen. "They use channels that look legitimate. A large donation to a foundation he controls, which then pays an exorbitant consulting fee to an offshore shell corporation. It's clean, legal, and almost impossible to trace unless you know what you're looking for." There was a pause on the line. "You know this world very well," she said, the words an observation, not a question. "I used to," he replied, the words clipped. A flash of memory. Sirens, shattered glass, the scent of rain on hot asphalt. He shook it off. "I need access to the board's private expense server. The one they use for off-the-books travel and entertainment. That's sealed at the highest level. Not even I have unilateral access," she said. "Then get it," Liam stated, his tone flat. "Thorne is our man. I can feel it. The proof will be there." Another pause, longer this time. He could almost hear the calculations running in her mind, the risk analysis, the weighing of probabilities. When she spoke again, her voice had a new quality to it, a grudging respect that cut through her usual icy control. "I'll have it for you within the hour." The wall between the penthouse and the sub-basement was still there, but for the first time a door had been opened. Their alliance was no longer purely transactional. It was becoming one of mutual dependence, a shared secret in the silent halls of a company under siege. He was her ghost, her secret weapon, and he was beginning to realize, was the only person who could understand the language he had been forced to speak again. He was still hiding, but he was no longer entirely alone in the dark. The access credentials for the board server arrived exactly 58 minutes later, a silent testament to Anya's influence. Liam dove in. This was the inner sanctum, the digital ledger where the company's true power brokers recorded the indulgences and informal deals that never appeared on official balance sheets. It was a world of private jets, lavish dinners, and consulting trips to exotic locales. For hours, Liam sifted through the noise, cross-referencing dates and locations against Marcus Thorne's known movements. Then he found it. It was a single-line item, buried in the expenses for a conference in Geneva 6 months prior. A payment of €200,000 to a company called Helvetic Solutions. It was listed as geopolitical risk assessment. It was a plausible, if vague, expense. But the date caught Liam's eye. It was 2 days before Sterling Faro, Pharmaxis's main rival, announced a surprise breakthrough in their own autoimmune drug development. A breakthrough that had seemed to come from nowhere. Liam's fingers flew across the keyboard. He pulled up everything he could on Helvetic Solutions. It was a ghost corporation, a shell registered in Zurich with no employees and no public profile. But by digging through Swiss corporate registries, He found the name of its sole director, Dr. Alistair Finch. A quick search revealed Finch was a disgraced biochemist who had been fired from Sterling Faro 5 years earlier for selling corporate secrets. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Thorne hadn't just sabotaged Project Lyra. He had been feeding Pharmaxis's research to Sterling Faro for years. The Geneva payment wasn't for risk assessment. It was a payout to his middleman, Finch, for the stolen Lyra data. The sabotage of the clinical trial was the final, brutal act, clearing the path for the rival drug he had helped create. He was gutting the company from the inside for personal gain. Liam felt a cold, hard knot of certainty in his stomach. This was it. This was the proof that solidified everything. He compiled the data, the server logs, the financial transfers, the corporate records of the shell company, the background on Finch into a single encrypted file. He titled it The Viper and sent it to Anya. Her call came less than a minute after she opened the file. There was no preamble. It's Thorne, her voice was like chips of ice. The professional betrayal was a palpable thing, even over the secure line. Marcus Thorne had been her mentor when she first joined the board. He had championed her for the CEO position. He's been playing a long game, Liam said, his eyes still scanning the data, looking for any other connections. He positioned you as CEO because he thought you'd be a figurehead, easy to manipulate while he sold the company out from under you. When you proved to be more competent than he expected, he decided to remove you. A long, heavy silence stretched over the line. Liam could picture her in her penthouse office, surrounded by the glass walls that were meant to give her a commanding view of her kingdom, now realizing one of its chief architects was a traitor. "The board meeting is in 2 days," she said finally, her voice hard as diamond. "We will present this. We will have him removed. We will be discreet. No public scandal. The company's stability is paramount. He won't just let you," Liam warned. "A man this careful, this ruthless, he'll have contingency plans. He knows we're looking. My activity on the servers, your recent security upgrades, he will have noticed. He's a cornered animal, and he's about to get desperate. Let him," Anya said, a dangerous edge to her voice. "I have you. He has no idea what's coming for him." The call ended, but Liam felt a profound sense of unease. Anya's confidence was a product of her world, a world where conflicts were won in boardrooms with data and leverage. Liam's old world had taught him a different lesson. When powerful men are cornered, they don't use leverage. They use force. They break things. They hurt people to create chaos and cover their escape. His unease solidified into ice-cold dread the next afternoon. He had taken a rare break to pick Lily up from the small art class he had enrolled her in, a splash of normalcy in their fortified existence. He watched her from across the street, his heart swelling as she emerged from the building, clutching a new drawing, her face alight with the pure, uncomplicated joy of a child. She was talking animatedly to her teacher, a kind-faced young woman. As they said their goodbyes, a black sedan with tinted windows, which had been parked 50 feet down the block, pulled smoothly away from the curb. It wasn't its movement that caught his attention. It was the man in the passenger seat. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking directly at Lily, his face impassive, holding a phone up as if taking a picture. The car didn't speed up or slow down. It just continued on its way, a silent, predatory glide. It was over in 5 seconds. But for Liam, time had frozen. He knew that look. He knew that cold, detached surveillance. It wasn't random. It was a message. We know what you value most. A wave of nausea and white-hot fury washed over him. He felt the phantom sensation of rain on his face, the screech of tires from 7 years ago. The trauma he had buried so deep it had become part of his bones clawed its way to the surface. Elena's face flashed in his mind, her smile, then the sudden, shocking absence of it. He sprinted across the street, his heart hammering against his ribs. He swept Lily up into his arms, holding her so tightly she let out a small squeak of surprise. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling the scent of crayons and childhood, a scent that was the only clean thing left in his world. "Daddy, you're squishing me," she giggled, oblivious. Look what I drew. It's our castle, and that's you, and that's the shiny lady from the tall building. He glanced at the drawing. There they were, 3 stick figures holding hands under a towering skyscraper. Lily, him, and Anya, a child's innocent rendering of their strange, new reality. But all he could see was the black sedan. Thorn knew. He didn't just know he was being investigated. He knew who was investigating him. He had found Liam's one vulnerability. The threat was no longer corporate. It was no longer about data or money. It had crashed through the firewalls of their secure, digital world and landed on a sun-drenched sidewalk, aimed directly at the heart of his entire existence. He held his daughter tighter. The ghost in the machine was done hiding. The father, the protector, was now fully awake. And he was going hunting. The boardroom was Anya's battlefield. But the shadows were his. The moment Liam walked into the sub-basement office, the secure phone on his desk was already ringing. He didn't need to see the caller ID. He snatched it up, his knuckles white. He made a move, Liam said, his voice a low, guttural sound he barely recognized as his own. There was no preamble, no deference. The hierarchy of CEO and asset had dissolved in the heat of his fear and fury. Anya's voice was tight, strained. What happened? My security team just flagged a vehicle that's been circling your daughter's art class for the past hour. They got a partial plate. It wasn't circling. It was parked. They weren't scouting. They were sending a message, Liam corrected her, pacing the small, claustrophobic room. They photographed her, Anya. They made sure I saw them do it. A heavy silence descended. In that silence, the entire nature of their conflict shifted. It was no longer a chess match played on a corporate board. The pieces were now flesh and blood. For Anya, it was the chilling realization that her opponent was not playing by the rules she understood. For Liam, it was the horrifying confirmation that his past was not just a memory, but a predator that had been lying in wait. Bring her to the tower. Now, Anya commanded, her voice stripped of all its usual corporate polish, leaving only raw, protective steel. Use the south service entrance. My personal detail will meet you there. She is not to leave your side. We're not running. We're not hiding. Liam shot back, the words torn from him. That's what I've been doing for 7 years, and it led right back to this. He made this personal. Now I'm going to end it. How? The question was sharp, demanding. The board meeting is the endgame. Your evidence is the weapon. The boardroom is your arena, Liam said, stopping his pacing to lean against the cold concrete wall. But Thorn won't wait for that. He's not going to walk into that meeting and let you dismantle him. He's going to lash out. He's going to create chaos. He'll try to destroy the evidence or the person who found it. Or he'll go after what that person loves. He closed his eyes. The image of the man in the sedan burned onto the back of his eyelids. We're past the point of just presenting evidence. We have to anticipate his next move. We have to hunt him. This was a language Anya was not fluent in, a strategy that couldn't be mapped on a spreadsheet. It required an understanding of human desperation, of the violent instincts of a cornered man. She was silent for a long moment, processing, recalibrating. When she spoke again, all traces of the Ice Queen were gone. She was just a commander, facing a battle she hadn't prepared for, forced to trust the instincts of her most unorthodox soldier. What do you need? She asked simply. The question unlocked something in Liam. The quiet, unassuming janitor, the haunted forensic accountant. Those personas fell away. What remained was the core of the man he had been before, the man who had once hunted the world's most dangerous financial criminals for a living. I need a live feed of all internal and external security cameras for the top 10 floors. I need access to Thorn's corporate car service logs, his driver's personnel file, his real-time GPS location. I need to see his office schematics, especially any hardline data ports that bypass the main network. And I need you to keep him occupied. Call him. Schedule an emergency pre-meeting for tomorrow morning. Just the two of you. Tell him you've uncovered a serious accounting discrepancy and need his guidance. Rattle his cage. Make him think you're still looking in the wrong direction. We need him to feel pressured to make a mistake. Anya absorbed the rapid-fire requests without question. Consider it done. A beat of hesitation. Liam, what are you going to do? I'm going to his office, he said. He thinks I'm a ghost in the machine. He's about to find out the ghost can walk through walls. The hours that followed were a blur of focused intensity. Anya, from her penthouse command center, became his eyes and ears, feeding him a constant stream of information. She moved with a speed and authority that was breathtaking, cutting through corporate red tape as if it didn't exist. Security chiefs, IT heads, department directors, they all scrambled to comply with her curt, unassailable commands, unaware they were serving an invisible man in the basement. Liam, meanwhile, prepared for his own kind of war. He used the schematics to map out the service corridors, the ventilation systems, the maintenance shafts around Thorne's 85th floor office suite. He studied the security patrol routes, the camera blind spots. This was his territory. He had spent 2 years polishing these floors, emptying these trash cans, learning the building's secret passages and hidden rhythms. The janitor's knowledge was now a tactical advantage. Lily was safely ensconced in Anya's own fortified penthouse, watched over by 2 of Anya's most trusted security personnel. She was happily drawing in her sketchbook, oblivious to the storm gathering 3 floors below, her presence a constant, silent reminder of the stakes. As night fell, Anya made the call. Liam watched on a split-screen feed, one showing a live GPS tracker of Thorne's car heading back towards the city, the other showing Anya's calm, composed face as she spoke into her phone. "Marcus," she said, her voice a perfect blend of concern and deference. "I apologize for the late hour, but something has come up, a rather significant anomaly in the Q3 projections. It has traces of the old Lyra project accounting. I was hoping you could lend me your experience first thing in the morning before the board convenes." Liam watched Thorne's digital icon on the map. The car, which had been heading towards his suburban mansion, made an abrupt U-turn and began speeding back towards the Pharmaxis Tower. The bait had been taken. "He's on his way," Anya's voice came over their secure channel. "He's rattled. His biometrics, which I'm monitoring through his corporate health app, just spiked. Heart rate is 110-inch. "Good," Liam said, his voice grim. He was now dressed in dark, functional clothing, the janitor's blue coveralls discarded like a shed skin. "He's not coming to the office to work. He's coming to erase his tracks." Their alliance, born of suspicion and necessity, had been forged into something new by the shared threat. The distance between the penthouse and the sub-basement had vanished. They were 2 minds, 2 wills, fused together by a single purpose. She was his overwatch, his intelligence. He was her operative, her sword in the darkness. The queen and her hidden king were moving their pieces in concert, hunting the viper in their midst. The trust between them was no longer reluctant. It was absolute, a silent, unbreakable bond forged in the face of a common enemy. Marcus Thorne's office was the epitome of old-world corporate power. Dark mahogany, leather-bound books that had never been opened, and a large, imposing desk that served as a barricade between him and the rest of the world. It was a room designed to project unassailable authority. To Liam, it was just a puzzle box. He moved through the darkened 85th floor with a silent, practiced ease. The security patrols had been subtly rerouted by Anya to the lower levels. A manufactured emergency about a tripped server alarm creating a convenient blind spot. He bypassed the main door to Thorne's suite, using a maintenance key to enter an adjacent janitorial closet. From there, a small, dusty ventilation grate gave him a perfect, unseen vantage point into the office. He settled into the cramped space, his view partially obscured by the metal slats. It was like looking at the world through a cage. On the multi-screen display of a small, military-grade tablet Anya had provided, he had everything he needed. A live feed from the heat signature camera he had placed above the door, access to the building's network activity, and an open, silent comms channel to Anya. Thorne arrived 20 minutes later. He moved with a frantic, nervous energy that belied his usual arrogant composure. He didn't turn on the main lights, using only the green glow of his desktop terminal to illuminate the room. Liam watched, his breathing slow and steady, a predator waiting for its prey to reveal itself. "He's in," Liam whispered into his wrist comm. "I see him," Anya's voice replied in his ear, calm and steady. "His network activity is live. He's accessing the board's private server. The one you found the Geneva payment on." Thorne's fingers flew across his keyboard. He was clumsy, making mistakes, his movements driven by panic. He was trying to cover his tracks, to delete the files that linked him to Helvetic Solutions. But Liam and Anya were ready. "He's attempting to wipe the directory," Anya reported. "But he can't. We firewalled that entire data cluster an hour ago and mirrored it to a secure off-site server. All he's doing is deleting a copy and creating a log of his own unauthorized attempt to destroy company property." Liam watched as Thorne's frustration mounted. The man slammed his fist on the desk, a muffled thud in the silent office. He was a trapped animal, gnawing at the bars of a digital cage he didn't even know was there. "He's giving up on the server," Anya said. "He's plugging in an external drive. A degausser, maybe? He's trying for a physical solution." "Not a degausser," Liam breathed, leaning closer to the vent. He could see the device now. It was small, black, with a single blinking red light. "It's a high-speed data transfer unit. He's not trying to destroy the evidence on the network. He's trying to download it. His personal files, his secret ledgers. Everything he'd need to flee." This was the move Liam had anticipated. Thorne wasn't just a traitor. He was an embezzler on a massive scale. The sabotage was only part of his scheme. He'd been bleeding the company dry for years, using a complex network of offshore accounts and shell corporations. The proof of those crimes wouldn't be on the Pharmaxis servers. It would be on a hidden, encrypted partition of his personal workstation. "Anya, I need to get in there," Liam said, his voice urgent. "He's going to take that drive and disappear. The doors are magnetically locked. His security code is the only override," she replied. "My team is 5 minutes away, but by then he could be gone." "There's another way." Liam looked up at the ceiling of the cramped closet. A series of thick data conduits ran through the crawlspace above. "The hard line. He has a direct, shielded data port under his desk. It bypasses the main network firewall. That's how he moved his stolen data without being detected. If I can get to the junction box in the ceiling." "It's too risky, Liam." "The biggest risks yield the greatest rewards," he said, the words a ghost from his former life. "Keep him distracted." Without waiting for a reply, he holstered his tablet and began to move. He hoisted himself up, his movements fluid and silent, into the dark, dusty space above the ceiling tiles. He crawled through the narrow gap, the darkness absolute, navigating by touch and memory. He could hear Thorne's frantic movements below him, the scrape of a chair, a muttered curse. Anya's voice came over the comms again, this time broadcast through Thorne's own desktop speakers. "Marcus, I'm glad you came back. I've been looking over your travel expenses. Geneva is lovely this time of year, isn't it?" Liam heard Thorne freeze. The game was up. Anya was openly showing her hand, a calculated move to keep him pinned in place. Liam found the junction box. He carefully removed the cover, revealing a dense nest of wires. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a network tap, and with surgical precision, clipped it onto the shielded cable. He connected the tap to his tablet. A stream of data began to flow onto his screen. He was in. He was riding the same hidden current Thorne was using to steal his secrets. He saw it all. The encrypted partition, the hidden folders, the ledgers detailing years of theft and deception. Millions upon millions of dollars siphoned away. The full scope of Thorne's betrayal was staggering. And at the bottom of the directory, one file, blinking as it was being actively transferred to the external drive, contingency_LI_zip. Liam's blood ran cold. He clicked on the file. It was a compressed folder containing the photos from that afternoon, along with a detailed dossier on him and his daughter. Her school, her schedule, her favorite park. It was a kill file, an insurance policy, A threat to be deployed if Thorne's primary plan failed. A white-hot rage, purer and colder than anything he had ever felt, washed over him. He initiated a counter-command, a brutal, swift data assault. He didn't just copy the files. He seized control of the entire transfer process. On the screen in Thorne's office, the progress bar for his download would have frozen, then reversed. Down below, Thorne let out a roar of pure fury. He ripped the external drive from the port. It was too late. Liam had it all. He had the corporate sabotage, the embezzlement, and now the personal threat. He had the whole Viper from head to tail. He initiated the final command. Wipe_local. Thorne's monitor went black. A single line of white text appeared in the center of the screen. Checkmate. Liam heard the sound of something heavy crashing to the floor. Then the splintering of wood as Thorne, in a blind rage, swept everything off his desk. At that exact moment, the main office doors hissed open, and Anya's security team flooded the room, their movements swift and professional. Liam didn't stay to watch. His work was done. He crawled back through the darkness, dropped silently into the janitorial closet, and slipped away into the service corridors, a ghost returning to the shadows. He had the evidence. He had the confession, logged by Thorne's own desperate actions. He had the man. And most importantly, he had the file that proved his daughter was a target. The hunt was over. The checkmate was absolute. The boardroom on the 88th floor was a theater of power, a long, sterile space dominated by a monolithic slab of obsidian that served as a table. The remaining members of the Pharmaxis board, a collection of grim-faced men and women who represented a combined net worth of several nations, sat in stunned silence. The air was thick with the aftershock of revelation. At the head of the table, Anya Sharma stood, her posture radiating an authority more absolute than ever before. She had just finished her presentation, a cold, methodical dissection of Marcus Thorne's decade-long betrayal. She had laid out the evidence with the precision of a surgeon, the financial records, the server logs, the irrefutable link to Sterling Pharaoh, and the logged, late-night attempt to destroy the evidence. Marcus Thorne sat slumped in his chair, his face a ghastly shade of gray. The arrogant, powerful man from the night before was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out shell. He was flanked by two members of Anya's security team, their presence a quiet, unyielding statement that this was not a negotiation. But the final, crushing blow had not come from Anya. "There is one more piece of evidence," Anya said, her gaze sweeping over the shocked faces of the board members. She nodded towards the door, slid open, and Liam Carrick walked in. He was not wearing janitor's coveralls or the dark, tactical gear of the previous night. He was dressed in a simple, well-fitting gray suit that Anya had procured for him. He looked like what he was, a man of quiet confidence and formidable intellect. He carried no tablet, no file. He was the evidence. A murmur went through the room. They knew him only as a ghost, a name in an email, the mysterious consultant Anya had brought in to investigate the data breach. To Thorne, he was a specter made flesh, the architect of his ruin. Thorne's eyes widened in dawning, horrified recognition. He was staring at the janitor. Liam walked to the head of the table and stood beside Anya. He did not look at the board. He looked only at Marcus Thorne. "You didn't just commit corporate espionage and embezzlement, Mr. Thorne," Liam said, his voice calm, level, yet carrying the weight of a death sentence. "You made a threat against a child. My child." He placed a single, small piece of paper on the polished table and slid it down towards the board. It was a child's drawing. A drawing of a castle and 3 stick figures holding hands. Lily's drawing. "This is what you targeted," Liam continued, his voice dropping, becoming intensely personal. "This is the life you threatened to use as your contingency plan." He finally looked at the other board members, his gaze hard and unflinching. "The data proves his crimes against this company. This," he tapped the drawing, "proves the nature of the man you had in your midst." The drawing, so innocent and pure, was more damning than any financial ledger. It transformed Thorne from a white-collar criminal into something far more vile. It made his betrayal not just a matter of corporate malfeasance, but of moral bankruptcy. The silence that followed was absolute. The fight went out of Thorne completely. He had been exposed not just as a thief but as a monster. The board voted unanimously. Thorne was stripped of his title, his shares, his legacy. As security led him from the room, his face vacant, his eyes met Liam's for a fleeting second. In them, Liam saw not hatred, but the blank, utter incomprehension of a man who had been so thoroughly and completely outmaneuvered. When he was gone, the tension in the room finally broke. The board members, suddenly animated, began talking at once, the conversation turning to damage control, to market stability, to the future. Anya held up a hand, and silence fell once more. "The future of this company is secure," she announced, her voice ringing with a newfound clarity and strength. "Our first act in this new chapter will be to create a new position, chief of a new division of forensic auditing and corporate security. It will be an independent office, reporting only to the CEO and the board. It will be our shield, ensuring that something like this can never happen again." Her eyes found Liam's. A silent communication passed between them, a confirmation of a conversation they'd had in the quiet hours after Thorne's capture. "And I have already found the perfect candidate to lead it. Mr. Carrick has accepted the position, effective immediately." If the board was surprised to see a man they'd never heard of elevated to such a powerful role, they didn't show it. They had just witnessed his efficacy firsthand. His quiet, commanding presence had sealed the deal. They voted to approve the motion without debate. Later, after the whirlwind of legal proceedings and corporate restructuring had begun, Liam and Anya stood alone in her office. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city below. The bottle of poison medicine, still in its evidence bag, sat on a side table, a stark reminder of how this had all begun. "You were right," Anya said softly, looking out the glass wall. "My world is data and leverage. But I was missing the most important variable, the human element." She turned to him, and for the first time he saw not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, but the woman. There was a vulnerability in her eyes, a weariness, but also a profound gratitude. "Thank you, Liam. We protected what mattered," he said, his mind on Lily, safe in the penthouse above, likely demanding a bedtime story. "I have one final offer for you, Mr. Carrick," she said, a faint, uncharacteristic smile touching her lips. "Your new position comes with a residence. The corporate penthouse on the 87th floor. It has more than enough room for you and your daughter. And the commute is efficient." It was an offer of more than just a home. It was an offer of proximity, of partnership. An invitation to close the final distance between the sub-basement and the penthouse, to merge their separate, fortified worlds into one. Liam thought of the 7 years he had spent in the shadows, a ghost running from his own life. He thought of the quiet, anonymous existence he had craved. But he wasn't that man anymore. He had been forced to reclaim his identity, not for vengeance, but for love. And in doing so, he had found something he hadn't realized he was missing: a purpose and a partner. "I accept," he said. Outside the glass walls, the city glittered, no longer indifferent, but full of promise. The new order had begun. 6 months later, the light in the 87th floor penthouse was soft and warm. The sterile, corporate feel it once had was gone, replaced by the comfortable, lived-in clutter of a real home. A half-finished puzzle sat on a low table, and colorful drawings were held by magnets to the gleaming stainless steel refrigerator. One drawing, more prominent than the others, was framed on the wall. It depicted 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a very tall building. Liam stood by the window, not the floor-to-ceiling glass wall of Anya's office, but a smaller, more human-sized window that looked out over the park. He wore a soft sweater and held 2 mugs of tea, watching as the last of the autumn leaves drifted to the ground. He was no longer a ghost. He was Liam Carrick, Chief of Corporate Security for Pharmaxis, a man whose reputation for finding the truth was already becoming legendary in the corporate world. But more importantly, he was a father, watching the world with a peace he had once believed was lost to him forever. The door to the penthouse opened, and Anya came in, followed by a giggling Lily, who was chattering excitedly about her day at her new school. Anya had shed her severe CO armor for a simple dress, and her hair was down, softening the sharp lines of her face. The transformation was remarkable. The ruler had become a leader, one who now managed her company with a blend of data-driven brilliance and a newfound human intuition. She smiled more. She listened. She trusted. "Daddy, we saw a squirrel with a giant acorn. It was this big," Lily exclaimed, stretching her arms wide. "A monster acorn?" Anya confirmed with a mock-serious expression, her eyes twinkling as she met Liam's gaze over Lily's head. It was a clear and present danger to park security. Liam chuckled, handing Anya a mug. "I'll have my best man look into it tomorrow." Their life had found a new rhythm, a delicate balance of work, family, and healing. The scars of their respective pasts were still there, his trauma, her betrayals, but they were no longer gaping wounds. They were part of their story, the foundation upon which they had built this new, unexpected life. Their professional alliance had deepened into a quiet, steady partnership that was slowly, carefully, blossoming into something more. They were two isolated souls who had found a home in each other. Later that evening, after Lily was asleep, they sat together on the sofa. The city lights a distant, silent backdrop. The comfortable silence between them was a language in itself. "I looked at the final numbers for the new Lyra trials today," Anya said softly. "The FDA is fast-tracking approval. It's going to change millions of lives." She turned to him, her expression open and sincere. "None of it would have happened without you. You didn't just save me, Liam. You saved this company's soul." "You're the one who saved it," he countered gently. "You made the choice to trust a janitor. You chose to listen to a little girl's whisper." He thought back to that night, the moment his carefully constructed world had been shattered, only to be rebuilt into something stronger and more beautiful than he could have imagined. He had been a king in hiding, a man who had abdicated his own life. But a king's purpose isn't to hide, it's to protect his kingdom. He had just been mistaken about what his kingdom was. It wasn't a world of numbers or a corner office. It was the small, warm hand of his daughter in his, and the steady, trusting presence of the woman beside him. It was this room, this life, this earned and cherished peace. He was finally home. How often do we build walls to protect ourselves, only to find that true safety lies in having the courage to let someone in? The fortress we think we need is sometimes just a prison, and the key to our freedom can be found in the most unexpected of places, in the quietest of whispers, if only we have the wisdom to listen.